Hey guys, I'm going to start a new video series for building an RPG game for the Mac and the iPhone. Uh, this is going to be a very lengthy series. There's going to be a bunch of videos explaining on how to do it. And it's not going to be anything fancy. It's just going to be like groundwork stuff just to kind of get people who might not have a whole lot of exposure to Objective-C, the programming language used for the Mac and the iPhone, to give them a little exposure and walk you through like the creation of an actual game and see how things flow and whatnot. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to open up Xcode and we're going to create a new game project or a new code project. We're not going to start with an iOS project yet. We're going to stick with OS 10 and we're going to build a command line tool for now. So we will go next and we will call this My Awesome RPG, and do it like this. And we are going to use Foundation for now. We are going to use automatic reference counting. Hit next. We will save this to here. Just save it wherever you want to save it. And this is what you should be presented with. If not, no worries. We're going to move away from this screen anyway. A lot of this stuff you don't have to worry about right now. So we're going to just hop over here to main.m and we're going to click this little button up here, the show utilities or hide utilities, and we're going to hide it. So one of the things I want to show you is this is going to be a text-based RPG game for now, and then as we move it to the iPhone, we will add some various 2D graphics and stuff to it. So it's important that we build the game in a very modular fashion that allows us to easily add onto it without having to go back and rewrite a bunch of stuff to get the 2D functionality into it. So with that having been said, we're going to explore the game world and whatnot in text for now, just so we can build our core foundation of the game. So if you were to come up here and run this, you can run it by hitting the play button, and you can see down here, hello world is printed out, and that is what is up here. So I'm going to assume that you have some programming experience, some background, and that you have at least looked into Objective-C. I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time explaining how things work, and I would really recommend that you get a book, or you go and study up on pointers, C++ and C pointers, to understand how those works. I guess yeah, we need to understand how those work. Because like I said, this is not going to be a tutorial on how to code an Objective-C. This is more or less just a tutorial on showing you how to get your feet wet with building an actual a game that you can play and run on your devices. So we're going to get rid of this line. This NSLog, whenever you use it, it prints out the date. It's time-stamped, then your project name. And I don't really like that, especially when if you can see, if you can do NSLog, welcome to my awesome RPG. So if we run this, you can see it gets very convoluted and you can't really make out what all is going on because you got all this extra stuff in here. So what I do is you can use something such as let's take a look here. Something such as this, stdio, standard input output, and do printf %s /n. Well, no, we're just going to do welcome to my awesome RPG printf You are in a bright room. Okay, so now if we run, you can see, oh, we did not include, it does not automatically, or obviously printf, for those of you who are familiar with it, does not automatically include line breaks, so we have to put a slash in there, puts a line break. So you are in a bright room. The issue here is that printf does not work with Objective-C strings. So if I had this is an Objective-C string, player name equals, we'll do in a string alloc, and my computer is, there we go, string with, I can't do string, well, we can do it like this, in a string with format, Bobby. So what we can't do is we can't come down here and say welcome Bobby, right? This is going to fail. Just going to put welcome to my awesome RPG. So in Xcode even tells you down here that it's an invalid conversion specifier. So you have to convert the string into a C string, which is cumbersome and really annoying. And to kind of show you what that would look like is you would have to do something like this. Player name UTF-8 string, and now you can see welcome Bobby to my awesome RPG. But every time that I print something out to the console, I don't want to be converting it all the time. It's really a pain in the butt. And then I also don't want to be always appending or always specifying a new line break. So what we're going to do for very first thing is we are going to get rid of all this, and we're going to build our own console class. So we're going to create a new file, Objective-C class, and we're going to call this console. And you will leave it as a subclass of NSObject. Create it, just leave it inside your MyAwesomeRPG folder for now. There we go. So we have our H file and our M file. One of the nice things with Objective-C, or well, I guess, actually I take that back. One of the nice things about Xcode is that you have this little button up here, the assistant editor. You can touch it, and it shows you now the header file over here and the implementation file over here. So you can code side by side. And also down here, this is your debug area in your console. If you hold down Shift, Command, and then push Y, it hides it. Because every time you run the game, this is going to show up. Well, it never ran. Oh, because I deleted everything. So if we were to do nslog test and run it, it printed it out, and now we have the console back. So you're going to want to get used to hitting Command, Shift, and Y to hide it after each time, because it takes up a lot of screen real estate, and you're going to need that. So let's go ahead, and also we will make this wider. So we only need two methods. The first one will be, and they're going to be class methods. They're not going to be instance methods. So, and if you don't know what the difference is between a class method and an instance method, I would recommend you go and you research, take a look at that as well. A class method basically is that you do not have to create an instance of the object in memory, but it's more in depth than that, and I would recommend you go and take a look at some documentation online. Stanford University has a really good course in that, actually. You can get that through iTunes University in iTunes for free. I would recommend you take a look at that. It's really good material. So we're going to create two methods. One is going to be called write, and it is going to accept an argument of NSString, and that will be our actual content that we write. And then we will create another one, that will be void write, and this one will take content with new line, use new line. Okay, so we have one where we will just print out the actual content that we want, and then another one where we can specify if we want to use a new line or not. So this is going to be fairly simple. We are just going to come down here and we're going to build the first one, which will be void I write in a string content with new line. I build this one first because I'm going to cheat a little bit, and you'll see how here in just a minute. So we are going to go if use new line write. Oh wait, we don't have that implemented yet, so we have to do this. We'll go ahead and come up here and do void write content there. So now I can come up here and I can say if use new line is true, then you put these little brackets here, self write content, and we're done. Else we will do printf %s content utf-8, and we are good to go. Notice here that there is no /n right here because use new line would be false, and that's how we would get to this line. Up here, use new line would be true, so we will come up here and we will write printf %s/n content, and I don't know why my laptop is taking a dump here, but UTF. All right, so that's done. And to test it, we can come back to my main. Well, wait a minute, we need to actually come back here, and inside of console.m we need to import std, the standard input output header file. Build it again. I'm not sure why Xcode, I believe Xcode will automatically include that for you if it sees it, and that's why it doesn't generate any errors, but you should include it anyway. So now we can go back to our main and we can just import our console, and because they are class methods, we do not need to instance an object. We can just come here and we can type in console write welcome to my awesome RPG, and we can, if we want to prove that the new line does not work, we can come here and say welcome, put a space here, with new line no, and now we can go here and we can put console write Bobby there. Now it should write welcome to my awesome RPG on one line, because if you remember correctly, we will come over here, manual, and we will find our console. By calling write, which is right here, we force a new line after every write call. But because here we are using with new line equals no, we are not going to include a new line. And then we come back and we call just a standard write method again, which will force a new line. But because up here there was no new line, it will say welcome Bobby all on one line. So we should have only two lines print to the console. If we hit play, we have two lines print. So this gives us some flexibility now, and it makes things easier to write stuff out. So we will command shift and Y to hide that again. Now we are good to go. We have our console class built. The next thing that we really need to do is we need to create our world, and how we're going to do this is we're going to have a world object, a world class, and then the class will contain will hold a collection of locations, and locations are the actual locations that the player interacts with, that he actually is within. So to do that, we're going to create a new group here, and we will call this models. And it's good for you to always keep your core classes outside of your like completely independent, completely separate. And if you don't understand model view controller paradigm, you can let's see here. You can Google it. Objective C MVC, and this might require nope. So here you can just Google it, and Apple does it. I googled Objective C MVC, which is Model View Controller, and that is the paradigm that they use for their iPhone applications and their Mac applications. Since this is eventually going to turn into an iPhone application, we want to program this with this paradigm in mind. So this design pattern. So you want to go ahead and read all of this. This is really good. It teaches you what exactly the whole model view controller method is. But see, here's the model, and the model is actually what holds the actual data and manages the state, or contains the state of the object. And then you have something else that manipulates that state and and makes calls to the model and takes the information from the model and presents it to the user. Or I'm sorry, not the view, but the controller does that. So the controller talks to the model, gets the information it needs, and presents it to the user. So we will always put all of our core classes for the game into our models folder. So we will right click on models and tell it new file, Objective-C class. This is going to be called location. And we're going to save this. Now, same thing here. Groups, these group folders are completely independent from your actual folder layout inside of your on your hard drive. So you got to create a new folder here called models inside of your project, and click on that, and then make sure group is selected as models as well. And we will create. So once again, we now have our location header and our location implementation file, which is not over here because I switched this to manual, but you can pop this open, go to counterparts, location, and now we have our implementation file over here and our header file over here. And you could always verify that by looking up here that this is location.h and this is location.m. So we need to create a couple of properties for our location. Obviously, we're going to need the name of the location because we need to know what the location is called. If it's your bedroom, if it's a pub, if it's the alleyway. We also need a collection of doorways so that we know what doorways this location has and which direction the characters can move to and from in order to move to the next location. And then, speaking of characters, we also need a collection of something to store all of the characters that are currently inside of this location. So let's go ahead and create our properties. We're going to create a strong, non-atomic, and a string for the name. And then we are going to, we are going to create actually a read-only, non-atomic, NS mutable dictionary for the doorways. And the reason why I choose a dictionary is because it lets you have a key and a value. The value will be the actual what will the value be? The value will be the actual location object itself, and the key will be the direction that the user needs to travel in order to get out of this location into the next location. All right. So next we need to do the same thing with occupants. Now the reason why I made this read only is because the doorways will be set up initially when the game starts. Once the doorways are set up, there is no reason for us to ever have to change them. Maybe at some point down the road we might want to add some way to destroy a doorway if the user did something or the player did something and it broke the door. But for now we're going to keep it very basic and simple, and we are just going to make it read-only because we don't want anything to be able to edit these doorways, because we know what the world will look like because we will create the world, and so we don't want to have anything editing our world without us being aware of it and then that causes issues down the road when we might say, hey, it's okay to go this direction because we know it exists, and then it doesn't exist or something. So lastly, we need to create, and I'm not going to make obviously the and also we will do the same thing here. We will make this would be a mutable array, but we will make our occupants collection read-only as well. And then what we'll do is we will create some helper methods to add doorways and add characters. And the other reason why this is read-only is because I don't want users to be, or I don't want us to be able to just call doorways.setObject, which would add something to it. Because what if I wanted to do some kind of safety check code or something like that? I mean, we could do it in the setter and the getters if we wanted to, but I prefer to actually have more flexibility with this, and you'll see what I mean here in a little bit. So what we want to do next is go ahead and create our methods, and we will do that first by adding building our add methods. So let's do actually, you know what, we need to do our initializer. So we will do id init with name. We're going to create a custom initializer here in a string name, and we're going to set this as our designated initializer. Designated initializer means that this is the initializer you have to use every time you use this class. You can't just use the default NSObject init initializer. So, and we can come over here real quick and flesh this out so that you can see what I mean. Init with name. This will call self equals super init. Okay, so that's fine. But what we don't want to do is have, inside of our main, let's go over to main real quick, and we will include, or we will import location. And what we don't want is we don't want someone to go location equals location alloc init. Okay, because the name will never be set. And then we will you always need to have a name. You should never create a location without assigning some kind of a name to it. And yes, you could always do location.name equals blah, but there's always a possibility that you forget that. And if you have a big game that has thousands of locations, you might not hit every one of them during testing. You should, but you might not hit every one of them during testing, and you might not catch typos, or you might not catch the fact that you just forgot to include a name. So we will always create one when we create an object. This forces it. So that is the reasoning behind that. So let's go back to our location. We'll just leave this here. I'm going to go ahead and delete this because we're not going to use that right now. In this video, we're just going to do our foundation header files. We aren't going to do any implementation code. But real quick, so let's go ahead and do our get. Well, we should do our adds first. So let's do void add character to room. And you know what? We don't have a character, right? So we can't do that. So we got to come back over here to our models, right click, new file, and we're going to create a character. It will be a subclass of NSObject, and make sure to select models to put it inside of there, and we are good to go. And I always like to organize mine and make them alphabetical. Okay, so we don't need to do anything inside of character for now. Let's leave that alone. But now we can come back here and we can put add character to room character. And you'll notice that this did not highlight because I have not imported it. So we need to make sure and import character. Okay, so we are good to go now. We should be able to. Also, I want to add doorway location to room, and we're going to make this a location. And You can't just arbitrarily add a doorway to the room or to this location. You need to specify which direction the player needs to travel in order to use that doorway, right? I mean, a door in the middle of the room does no good because a player needs to know which way to walk in order to use that doorway. So we will say by traveling in a string direction. Okay, and since we're not going to do any of our implementation code, you can switch over here, click this little button here, just a standard editor, and it gives us a much bigger viewing angle. So, and one other thing to do is right here where the space is at between the arguments, I usually hit enter, and it lines them up perfectly along these colons, and it helps keep things nice and compact. One other thing that I want to do is we should probably, let's do this, add doorway location to room, and you notice how it auto completes that for us. I mean, we can go here and we can do add doorway, and it lines it all up for us, so we can just tab through it all, and then we can add include, or including actually, reverse direction, and we'll make this a bool, include reverse. There, and what this will do is we can say, hey, we are going to add a room or add a doorway to this room. So say we are in our bedroom and we have a hallway. So we will say we want to add a doorway to the hallway inside of our bedroom. But then we also have to go into the hallway and we have to write the code for the hallway to say, I want to add a doorway to the bedroom inside of this hallway. Well, what we just did with this method here is we will write the code so that when we say, I want to add a doorway in the bedroom to the hallway, we can say include reverse equals yes, and it will automatically add a doorway in the hallway leading back to the bedroom, so we don't have to write that code ourselves. A little automation for us. Now you might ask, why isn't this the only one, since we will always want to make sure that our doorways are automatically added for us. Some rooms you might not want the player to travel backwards into. Say you have the player walk off the edge of something and he falls down through a hole or something. Well, you can't get back up through that hole. You just have to keep going forward. So you wouldn't want a reverse location or automatically include the reverse door at that point. So we have our add methods. I don't believe that we're going to need anything else. So now we just want to write our get methods, which is going to be location, get doorway from direction, and then ns array get occupants in location. And this is just going to return a copy of the occupants. And get doorway from direction, we can say west. We'll say the argument might be west, and so the room will look, or the location will look and say, hey, do we have a doorway leading to the west? If we do, give it back to them. If we don't give them anything. And now, because we add stuff to it, we need to be able to remove it. So void remove doorway from room in a string direction, void remove location from void remove location, darn it, from room. Okay, and what we're going to do with these, I will explain in just a second. Remove character from location. Okay, and what we actually need to do is we need to just say remove doorway from location. And remove location. So let's just do it that way. I don't want to add doorway to location. I don't want this room stuff because it starts getting confusing. Add doorway to location. Because these aren't rooms, we're calling them locations. Add character to location. Okay. So What get doorway from direction, we already explained that. Get occupants, this will just return a copy of our occupants array. So remove doorway from location, we will say, say the argument is west. So the location will look at and see if there is a doorway leading to the west. If there is, it will just remove the entire doorway. Something that we might want to do too is void remove doorway from location, including reverse direction. I mean, if we're going to add the ability to add a doorway to the opposite direction, we might as well add the ability to remove a doorway from the opposite direction as well. Next is remove location in general. This is, we will just say, hey, look, we don't know the doorway, we don't know the direction, we just want you to remove this location from being linked to this location in general. So say we have a bedroom and say we have a hallway. Well, what if the hallway is linked to the bedroom and vice versa? Okay. We don't know which direction you need to go in order to travel here to, from the bedroom to the hallway or from the hallway to the bedroom. We don't know the direction. But we might have a reference to the actual location. We might say, hey, I got a reference to hallway, so remove hallway, and the bedroom will just look through all the doors, find the hallway, and remove it. So it's just a couple of different helper methods for us. And then obviously remove character. This will remove whatever character is inside of there. We'll use that when the player moves. So when the player moves from one location to the next, we will just type in, or we will just execute or invoke remove character from location from the location that the character moved from. So say bedroom. And then we will call add character location for the location that the character moved into. So that gives us our locations. The one last thing that I want to do is we are going to create a new file, Objective-C class, and we are going to call this world. Make sure and click and put it into models. And world will be a very simple class. We're going to just need the name of the world, because we want something to hold all these locations in it. So we don't want there. So there's this is going to hold all of our locations. We don't want some to have 100 or a single file or a single class that has 1,000 locations as variables or as properties, cluttering up a lot of your space, and it makes it difficult to edit and whatnot. What we really want, and then we got to keep referencing that class to find what we really want is a dictionary where we can say, hey, because we might want to create stuff during runtime, or we might want to have multiple worlds. What if we want a world that's the light side and a world that's the dark side, and the player travels between them? We can easily create that by coming back over here, and we can say world light world equals, okay, and world dark world equals, okay. And now we can create stuff, and we can come over here and we can say dark world. Well, we can't now because I don't have any helper methods. But we can come over here, we can say, let's say location home equals location alloc init with name home. And now let's go back over here real quick. So we need a couple methods first. We need to be able to add locations to the world, so we're going to say add location to world. And we need to be able to get the locations out of there, so we're going to say location find location, and we'll just use it in a string for this because we will search by location's name. And lastly, we want to be able to remove location from world. There. There we go. All right. So we can go to main and we can come here and we can say light world, add location, home, right? And so you can build your entire game world or your entire light world, and the player would traverse through that light world, and then at any point you could just, you could tell it, we can do location, current location equals light world, find location, home. Okay, and then we can tell it current location, remove character player, right? If we had a player. We don't have a player right now, but I mean we can easily create one, right? Because we have there, and we can say home, add character to location player. Obviously these methods do nothing and it would actually fail. It would crash. If you can see down here, it crashes pretty horribly with a bunch of errors because we have not implemented those methods. So, but you get the general idea. I mean, we can create multiple worlds if we want to. We can create a player. We'll be able to place the player within the locations. We can add a location to one world or the other. We can remove a player. We can find a location. This is this is a major foundation for us to build our actual game off of. So that's all that I'm going to do on this video. One last thing, again, it's not implemented, but you could also do console write lightworld.name, and that would write out property name not found on object. Oh, that's because we called it world name. So and this would print the name of the current world out to the player if we had it implemented fully. But at least this gives you a general overview of what our game layout will look like, kind of how we will go about building the world and managing the actual game world itself by moving the player around and stuff. Our next video will go over actually implementing these files, and we might even get into some of the actual building an actual game class as well. So stay tuned for that. I hope this helps you guys out. Now, again, it's not meant to teach you Objective-C. It's meant to teach you or show you kind of how to build a game in a very object-oriented manner, and how the workflow and stuff goes and whatnot, and kind of help give you a little kickstart. So if you don't know a whole lot about Objective-C or programming in general, I would definitely recommend taking a look at. You can come up here and we can go to iTunes use Stanford iOS. And here, this is the 2010 one, but they have 2011, 2012. Well, they have iTunes U, coding together. So here's their actual, I'm not too sure how to get into, they've changed all this with the new iTunes. So I'm not sure how to go to the actual iTunes page, but you can go to the iTunes store and you can just do a search for Stanford iOS, and here's all of them. This is 2010, 2011. So here's the actual courses. So you'd want 2012, which I believe this one probably is. I assume that's fall 2011, but either way, any of them will work. It will give you a good there's a bunch of videos, a bunch of material, as you can see. So take a look at those. So hopefully this helps you guys out. If it did, hit the like button. I'd appreciate it. If you have questions or comments, leave them in the comment section below. And you can follow me on Twitter at ScionWest. Thanks, guys.